and then once you've been checked, you were allowed to leave. Except this guy wasn't allowed to leave. So today I'm going to be telling a story time about the time that I got trapped abroad during a global pandemic. If you cast your minds back just about 12 months, so at the start of March last year, I can't remember exactly when the pandemic officially got classed as a pandemic, but it wasn't like a huge deal yet until this particular weekend where the whole of Europe started to shut down. This guy found himself trapped abroad during that instance. And what happened, you're wondering? I'm going to try and answer that for you. Two of my friends and I had met the Christmas just before the pandemic, and we said, wouldn't it be fun if we went on a city break this year? And obviously, completely blindly, unknowingly of what was about to happen in the world, we booked some flights to go to Krakow in Poland. It's one of the biggest cities, and yeah, it's somewhere that none of us had been before. Sounded really nice, lots of history, lots to go and see, a national park just nearby. Sounded amazing, right? Well, it should have been, but the reality was something quite different. Anyway, flew to Poland, landed in Krakow, thought that, I was about to enjoy a nice weekend away with some mates, and then when the door of the plane opens, these stormtroopers board the flight. There's 5 or 6 guys, in, I guess, what you can only describe as like astronaut outfits, or like stormtroopers, or maybe if they did like a fashion line that combined the two, and they wanted to check everybody's temperature. Because obviously one of the early signs of the virus that we were all aware of was that people would get a raging temperature. So they came up and down the plane, checking everyone's temperature with these guns that looked like they'd been taken straight out of Doctor Who, and shone this green light on your head, checked your temperature, and then once you've been checked, you were allowed to leave. Except this guy wasn't allowed to leave. And I'm sat there in my chair, sweating by this point, because I've got 4 or 5 of these stormtroopers coming up to me one by one trying to check me because no one's getting a reading that they're happy with. I should have known then that it was only going to be downhill from that point, but fortunately after about the 5th guy checked, they decided, for whatever reason, and I was never told why, but they decided, okay, this guy can go, and they let me off the plane. Breathed a sigh of relief, travelled into central Krakow, met up with my friends. We went to a restaurant, had a really nice meal, sat there with some drinks, having a nice time, really social, really fun. And then we got a BBC News alert come through on one of our phones. The headline reads that Poland is about to shut down its borders, and that border shutdown will come into effect from midnight the very next day. It's now 9-10 o'clock on a Friday night, and they're announcing that the following evening all of the borders, land, rail, flying, all going to be shut down. There aren't actually that many regular flights between Krakow and the region of Sweden that I'm from. They only go a couple of times a week, and the next flight was going to be after this shutdown. So then I thought to myself, so now what do I do? My flight, the flight that I'm booked back on, is after the shutdown. Will it still be allowed to happen? People were swarming on the airport. We saw these pictures on Twitter of the airport concourse just absolutely full of people, which again didn't seem like a great idea because we were the whole point of being chucked out of the country was because of a virus, and now they're all assembling together. Obviously these days someone would have a heart attack if they heard that was going on, because that's definitely not what we want to be doing. But so we decided to stay put, stay in our Airbnb and try and follow the events from afar. So then suddenly it's like, we can't really do anything tonight. We don't know if our flights are still going. We don't know if we have to find another alternative means home. And the next day, we'd actually been booked on this trip to go up into the Polish mountains in the national park that I talked about. So we thought, none of us can fly home tomorrow anyway. There weren't flights to our destinations, or if there were, they didn't have space. So then it was just to go to bed, get up the next morning, jump on our bus and head out into the mountains, which took about 2 hours on a bus. And on the way up, we're sat on our respective phones trying to talk to our airlines, find out what's going on. No one was getting really very far or very many answers. And I remember even by the time we got up to this mountainside town, it was like a whole ghost town. It was dead. There wasn't anybody on the streets. None of the restaurants were open. They wouldn't let people go in to take food. In the end, we managed to negotiate some food from this small little buffet place, but we had to go and eat it outside. And this is like early March in Poland, in the mountains. It was snowing, and we're sat outside, not really with the clothes to be, eating our food outside in the snow, but needs must and all of that. We came home that evening and we began to think about what we were going to do next. But so I remember saying to my friends, maybe that's the way to go. Maybe, these cross-country buses, the Flix buses, for example, of the world, will still be running. So we went onto their website, and you could still book to go onto one of these Flix buses. And we thought, great, this is our escape. So I booked, first of all, a bus to Copenhagen, because then I thought from Copenhagen I could then get a train. It's quite easy from there to get to Sweden. It's just across a bridge, no problem. And then my friends did the same back towards London, and we breathed a sigh of relief. All of the signs were that the bus would still be taking place even though the border was shut, so we would still be able to leave the country. So my friends went to bed. Fortunately for me, my girlfriend rang me, and we sat there and chatted for a little bit. And once we were off the phone and I was just about to go to sleep, I thought, I'm just going to check the Flixbus Twitter account just to see if there's any update about what's going on, about their services and what they're running or not running. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning by this point. And I look on their Twitter account, and someone has asked about our very bus and said, like, oh, is this bus still going? And they write back and say, no, our buses are cancelled because of the borders being shut. And then I'm like, okay, well now I can't get out of the country by my plane, which is now by this point been cancelled for the Monday. So this is a Sunday night, and the border is now shut officially. We are trapped in the country. My plane back the next day isn't going. Ryanair in the meantime have told me that I should prepare to get accommodation for 2 weeks because they don't think that they'll be doing a rescue flight to Sweden for at least 2 weeks. And this is all beginning to sound a little bit scary. And now our bus is cancelled too. So I go and wake up my friends. I'm like, guys, we need to do something about this. What are we going to do? They don't know yet if their flight is cancelled or not, or if it's going to become a rescue flight. But obviously you can't count on that because at the same time you don't want to then get stuck in the country. And of course back then we all thought we'd just be stuck abroad for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then all the borders would open again, it would be fine. Now, a year later, we know that that's not the case, and we could have been stuck there for quite a lot longer. We're ringing taxi companies at like 3 in the morning by this point, saying, can you get us to the border? People saying, oh, well, we're not doing it, or we're already booked up. So then I decide, okay, well, if I can't find a bus outside of the country, maybe I can take a bus inside the country that will get me a little bit closer, because for those of you that don't know the geography of Europe, Poland is here, and then you have like a small channel, and then it's Sweden just above. So I was thinking if I can get just the top of Poland about 10 hours north, maybe I can find some other way across up there. And then I find out that the ferries between Poland and Sweden are still running, but they are also about to be stopped. If I wanted to make the last ferry that I could get before that border would shut, I had to be in Gdansk in the north of Poland, about 10 hours away, on the same day, about 13 hours from now, and it's a 10-hour bus journey. And by this point I'm panicking because there are trains, but you have to change in various places, and it just didn't seem very feasible. So what am I going to do? Then I check Flixbus again. There is a bus that is going at 6 o'clock in the morning. By this point it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I haven't slept. There is a bus in 2 hours that will get me up there if there aren't any delays, with about an hour and a half before my ferry. So I say goodbye to my friends, book my third, or maybe by this point fourth alternative travel option, run to the bus station, grab like a panini or something on the way from the only open shop I could find, and a couple of drinks because I don't know when I'm going to stop again. Get on this bus, travel all the way, the whole day it takes me to get all the way through the country. No stops on the way. It was just, they stop, they let people on, change driver, and go. And I was ordering food to the bus. Oh, I want a drink, or oh, I want a pizza, or whatever it was. And it was coming to the door, I was picking it up, and then we were traveling on again. And you obviously had to time that perfectly, because if the bus had already left, tough luck, goodbye to my food. Long story short, got all the way up to the north, to Gdansk. It was like an absolute ghost town. The bus drivers didn't even want to let me on the bus because they could see I was a tourist. And by this point, there's a lot of danger going around about the idea of the pandemic and corona and how it's going to spread. I walked about half of the way, and then by this point, it's getting really dark. It's really cold. I found a bus driver that let me on. I got to the port. I got on my boat, and I travelled back to Sweden overnight on an overnight ship. Fortunately, I had taken my work laptop and things with me because I was supposed to be back at work on the Monday. And as I say, it was just a weekend trip. So I could have actually stayed there if I needed to, but I would have obviously had to finance myself. There was no guarantee when I would get the opportunity to travel back again with my airline. So in the end, I was very grateful to get home and then begin my self-quarantine period right here on our sofa over there, working from home for a couple of weeks. And then I remember, for those of you that don't know, Sweden has taken a bit of a different approach to the pandemic to lots of countries. So we've never actually been in like a formal lockdown yet. But we kind of got close at the beginning. When every other country was shutting down, it felt like that's what was going to happen here. And so I remember I was at home for 2 weeks. I went back to work for one day once I'd completed my Corona quarantine period, and I got to go back to work for one day, and then the very next day they said, okay, it's work from home again now, and I've been at home on and off ever since, and you know the rest. Here we are a year later. That's my story about getting stuck abroad during the pandemic. What did you think? Would you have done something different? Has something similar happened to you? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Hey guys, you've just watched a highlight clip from last week's Just a Brit Abroad podcast episode. The podcast is released here on my YouTube channel once every 2 weeks. If you want to subscribe so you're ready for the next episode that comes next week, that would be great. And turn on that bell so that you're ready as soon as a new video comes out, you'll be notified. And if you want to check out the rest of the fun and games that happen in this week's Just a Brit Abroad podcast, make sure to check my channel. It's up there already. You can see the episode in its entirety instead of just a small clip like you've seen today. But either way, thank you for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye guys.